Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com, where we take a look at comics past and present. Today I'm going to talk about some milestone issues that came out not too long ago, specifically Batman 700, Superman 700, and the long-awaited Wonder Woman 600. Now, I've been a fan of these milestone issues for a very long time. I have many of them over the years. I think I posted about how I have Batman 400, 500, but somehow missed 600. So I'm going to have to remedy that sometime when I'm out looking for back issues. So I just reread all three of these issues, and I have to say, thinking back on when I first read them, I definitely had some ideas about what was my favorite, what was just okay, and what was kind of a disappointment. But rereading them, I have to say I really like all of them to some degree. Some stories better than others, but for the most part, all of them were pretty darn good. But let's get started. I'll go in alphabetical order. Start off with Batman number 700 with a great cover by David Finch, and what I thought was, when I first read it, what I thought was an okay story, but after rereading it, a wonderful story by Grant Morrison, spanning different eras of Batman. The first being a story called Yesterday, starting with Bruce Wayne, and then a later one with Dick Grayson as Batman, and then Damian Wayne as a future Batman, and then we get even more future Batman right at the end of the story, showing how the Batman endures. And in the end, actually there's a really cool one page bit showing a Batman and looks like a robotic Robin fighting some bad guys, some Joker-themed bad guys it looks like, but the Batman costume looks pretty cool. And then we get a bunch of pin-ups, which were okay. But that story by Grant Morrison was just a lot of fun. I have to admit, I never read the Batman R.I.P. or any of the other stuff that Grant Morrison did recently with Batman. But after reading this again, and also just happened to have listened to the DC Comics podcast featuring the Grant Morrison panel, the guy just is amazing, and he's funny. He's crazily brilliant, I think, in some ways, and his stories are just, they really make you think, and they're highly entertaining. And so I'm gonna have to go and go read those old issues, or at least get the trades anyway. But like I said, one of these anniversary issues was kind of a disappointment to me, and when I first read it, and Batman was it. When I first read this, I wasn't all that impressed with it. But after, like I said, after rereading it, I have to say I really enjoyed it, much better than I initially thought I would. Next up is Superman 700 with a cover by Gary Frank, whom I cannot stand. I've been reading the Superman Secret Origin, and if you go back and read some of my past pull list reviews featuring those issues, I can't help it. I complain every time about Gary Frank's art. Anyway, the first time I read this issue, I really wanted to like it a lot, because I have a soft spot in my heart for Superman. I know a lot of people complain about, it being Superman and the Boy Scout, and he's not really interesting, and he's got all these powers, and he's kind of boring and milquetoast and all that stuff. But I really like Superman. And one of the things I like about the more recent Superman stories is his relationship with Lois Lane and how their marriage, and I like how they portray that. And what I get in the first story is a nice little tale about Clark and Lois and how they feel about each other and what they mean to each other as individuals, and how much Clark really relies on Lois to keep him sane, I guess. To keep him grounded is probably the better way to put that. So we have a nice little story of that. Wonderful. There's a wonderful panel of Lois's face when she first sees Superman back from New Krypton and after the events of War of the Supermen. It's a lovely picture of her, and then of course they kiss. And that was a really nice story, really touching. I liked that a lot. But then we get the next story, which was done by Dan Jurgens, whom I like a lot. He's a pretty good storyteller and a pretty good artist. But it was more of a Robin story than a Superman story. Superman helps Robin out in a jam and helps keep Bruce off Dick's back a little bit about his studies. But it was really more a story about Robin, and normally I would not care about that because I love that character. But this is a Superman anniversary issue, and so why do we have this story that's mostly about Dick Grayson? But anyway. And then finally we have the story that is the prologue to where Superman is going under the helm of J. Michael Straczynski, and again, I really want to like what Straczynski is going to do with the character, but this whole concept of Superman's walk across America, if this is any indication of what's to come, I'm not that impressed with it. I mean, I can see how Clark is upset about how recent events in the War of the Supermen, how that may have impacted, normal people's lives, but for him to be portrayed so, I don't know, mopey, so despondent over it, that's not Superman to me. I understand him getting upset about something, but to be, I don't know, the way he's being portrayed to me is he's almost depressed about it, and this is his way of dealing with it by taking a walk across America and getting in touch with his roots and getting in touch with the people. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. Well, I guess we'll see. The one thing I did really like, too, though, about this anniversary issue was at the end of it, we get one page each on each of the Superman books, Action Comics, Supergirl, and the upcoming Superboy. So not only do we see where the title Superman is going, but we also get a little glimpse of where those other titles are going. So I thought that was a great way to introduce new readers, and I consider myself a new reader of this book, to what the plan is for those issues or those comics, and maybe possibly enticing me and others to read them. So I thought that was a really good plan. I kind of wish they would have done that in the Batman book, and also, well, I can't say about the Wonder Woman book because she only has one comic, and that's just wrong, isn't it? And speaking of Wonder Woman, we now have Wonder Woman 600 to look at with I have to say, a mediocre cover by George Pérez. George has been one of my favorite artists for a very long time, starting with the New Titans back in the 80s, but I've always felt that his Wonder Woman, actually Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, there's something about those characters that just don't ring true to me when he draws them. But anyway, so we get that cover, and then you open it up, and here's a little introduction by Linda Carter about how Wonder Woman can save the world. I thought that was cute. You turn the page, and you get this wonderful pinup by Adam Hughes. Just beautiful. I love the negative space quality of his work. And then we get a nice little story, and this story to me epitomizes Wonder Woman to some degree, because here's a story where she recruits a lot of the female superheroes to help out with something, and as one character says, as Manhunter says to Ravager, "This doesn't seem like your kind of gig," and Ravager replies, "She asked, I came." I thought that was a nice way a real simple, short way to define how Wonder Woman is viewed in the DC universe, especially by the female superheroes. They defeat the bad guy, but more importantly, we go back to the mid-1980s Wonder Woman title that George Pérez had worked on, where one of the characters is graduating, and Diana and her have some words, and I thought that was a nice way to kind of cap that series off, to tie it in and to cap it off a little bit. And then we get some more, beautiful, beautiful pinups, especially the one by Nicholas Scott. And I think she was artist on the last Wonder Woman run, or maybe it was a couple ago, and all I heard was how good she was. And if this pinup is any indication, I really missed out, and maybe I need to go back and read those trades. The other stories are, okay. There's one with her in Power Girl, and one with her in Superman. They were okay. Oh, and there's a beautiful, beautiful 2-page spread done by Phil Jimenez of Wonder Woman, and all these images of her past behind her, and where George Pérez, to me, kind of fails in drawing Wonder Woman, Phil Jimenez succeeds. And I only mention that because Phil Jimenez is he's kind of known as a sort of a George Pérez clone, but he may have started off like that, but he definitely has his own distinct and beautiful style that I really appreciate. And then finally we get not finally, the next to last little bit I wouldn't call a story, but it's something that Jeff Johns wrote. But in it he says, there's some dialogue here where it says, "Diana is far too undervalued by this world. This must change. Let the odyssey of Wonder Woman begin." And then we get the J. Michael Straczynski story, where it's the new Wonder Woman with the new costume that's caused quite the stir in the internet land, and you get the new direction, which when I first heard about this, I was like, oh, I don't know, this sounds like a retread, this sounds like a bad idea. But then I read the story here, and I actually kind of like it. I'm interested to see where they're going to go with this, and what's going to happen, and how they're going to tie that into what Johns wrote in that previous story about how she's undervalued. And I'm hoping that changes, because I think Wonder Woman is actually can be a really interesting character when she's written well. And unfortunately, she doesn't always get that. So, and this was actually when I first read through the title, this was actually my favorite of the 3 anniversary issues. It still is. Having reread them now and just talked about them, I have to say Wonder Woman 600 was the best one, followed by the Batman 700, and then Superman 700. And that's not at all, other than Wonder Woman being first in my mind the first time. The other two weren't like that at all to me. The Batman one was at the bottom, Superman was the middle. So interesting how a reread will change your mind about comics. But that's the one thing I love about it. You read them, you enjoy them, you come back to them, and you find new things and enjoy them all over again. So that's my look at the milestone issues of Batman and Superman number 700 and Wonder Woman number 600. Thanks for listening.